Good morning. It's an honor to be here today in the midst of an exceptional group of global CEOs, policymakers, trade representatives, academicians, and aspiring young business leaders. At the outset, I'd like to thank each one of my co-chairs on the task force for inclusive GVCs for resilient trade and investment for their invaluable contribution in shaping the policy recommendations. A special note of thanks to all the task force members from across G20 countries for their suggestions, insights that have added richness to the policy document, and for their collaborative engagement that truly reflected the depth of the commitment to our shared objectives. I take pride in the spirit of collaboration that defined our collective efforts. Being a part of this task force has been a profound learning experience, one that has enriched our collective understanding of the complexities of global trade, investment, and diplomacy. Together, we have not only contributed to policy recommendations that I present on behalf of the task force today, but also forged enduring connections and insights that will undoubtedly guide our future endeavors. Driven by the past experience over the last 5 years, when unpredictable events severely disrupted supply chains around the world, building resilient value chains has emerged as a key focus for businesses, an imperative indeed, while simultaneously ensuring sustainability, security, transparency, and inclusion in global value chains. Set against this backdrop, while maintaining the continuity of key recommendations from previous years and taking them a step forward, this year's task force discussions introduced several new, novel, and pivotal concepts that align with the evolving economic and business landscape, and I'd like to touch upon these new areas first. One such focal point is the exploration of the multifaceted benefits that technology offers in the context of trade, addressing challenges and opening new opportunities. The usage of Industry 4.0 tools in trade, encompassing AI, ML, DLT, and blockchain as well, collectively being referred to in the paper as Trade 4.0, has direct measurable benefits in terms of increased efficiency, reduced cost, greater transparency, and predictability, with a resultant enhancement in the resilience of GVCs. In addition, technology offers the opportunity of greater inclusivity in trade, enabling MSMEs and LDCs to participate more effectively in global supply chains. As technology's role in trade expands, so does the looming threat of cybersecurity. This year's discussions have delved into this crucial concern, ensuring we understand the intricate relationship between technology, trade, and the imperative of safeguarding against cyber risks. For the first time at this forum, and I think Chairman already mentioned that, the topic of advancing and diversifying services trade, which is currently growing faster than the goods trade, has been brought into prominent focus. Services is estimated to occupy 1/3 of global trade by 2040, and digitally delivered services today occupy, in developed economies, 2/3 of the overall services trade. Services are also now an integral part of manufactured goods, giving rise to the concept of servicification of manufacturing. This changing composition of global trade has emphasized the criticality of understanding the sector's challenges and engaging in global-level deliberations to formulate effective solutions. The task force has begun the dialogue in worldwide collaboration for resolution. Building on the process of the previous years, the task force has not only upheld existing KPIs from previous cycles, but also introduced new KPIs across all themes. This ensures that the insights and recommendations generated are not only translatable into actionable reality, but also establishes a robust framework for monitoring progress and maintaining continuity in our endeavors across B20 cycles. The new KPIs include human development through food security by tracking the number of undernourished people globally, world population engaging in online purchases and the percentage of population using the internet and LDCs, both towards measuring digital penetration, FDI in services by announced greenfield projects, percentage of LDC share in global exports, and formal MSMEs in developing countries with unmet financial needs, again, both towards measuring inclusivity. At an overall level, the task force paper recommends a path towards value chains that are characterized by resilience, inclusivity, innovation, technology, and sustainability. The task force recommendations emphasize robust and collaborative frameworks, agile regulations, and adaptive strategies along 4 priority themes: building resilient and sustainable global value chains, technology and trade, crossing borders with Industry 4.0, diversifying and advancing the services trade, and fostering inclusive trade for LDCs, MSMEs, women and youth. I'll touch briefly upon each of these recommendations and the policy actions. The first one on building resilient supply chains. As mentioned earlier, resilience has occupied center stage in the business of global value chains. Equipped with insights from the experiences of the disruptions caused by the pandemic and other geopolitical developments, the task force recommends establishment of a collaborative cross-border early warning systems for the detection and mitigation of potential trade disruptions through tech-enabled mechanisms and partnerships. Stress testing of value chains would be an enabler to boost proactive preparedness of GVCs across nations. In the evolution of risk-mitigated strategies, the role of government in infrastructure creation and promoting international cooperation, and that of the private sector in risk-mitigated sourcing and substitutability of materials have been emphasized. Green lanes for food security to avert a humanitarian crisis is recommended in the policy paper. Consistent with previous B20 cycles, this year's task force has repeated the advocacy for meaningful reform of the WTO, including re-establishment of the appellate body for dispute settlement and the review of the agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures, among other agreements. It is also imperative that sustainability is woven into the fabric of global value chains. The policy paper highlights the need to ensure that policy measures to support sustainability are multilaterally compliant and fair to all nations, keeping in mind their differential developmental status. Cross-border collaboration on ESG standards and carbon measurement will not only mitigate the risks associated with climate change, but also unlock new avenues for growth. The B20 calls for policies to encourage FDI flows towards green, sustainable, and circular business models. Technology and trade. In the application of technology and trade, there are challenges in terms of nations. Could I have the next slide, please, on technology? In the application of technology and trade, there are challenges in terms of nations being at various stages of digital maturity, with different levels of digital infrastructure and technology adoption. In addition, increasing number of cybercrimes, the lack of interoperability, and disparity in rules and regulations on digital trade and cross-border data flows can hinder the adoption of Trade 4.0. The task force calls upon the G20 to encourage and facilitate nations to invest in digital infrastructure in emerging economies and in poorly connected regions. The policy recommendations also advocate for facilitating interoperability in standards and protocols for digitizing and exchanging data, thus streamlining digital trade transactions. It urges nations to cooperate to address cybersecurity concerns on a large scale across value chains that transcend borders. Diversifying and advancing the services trade, specific policy actions in the area of services that are aimed to ease the advancement of the services trade relate to the classification of services and the disaggregation of embedded services in manufacturing. Facilitating the secure flow of data through addressing regulatory standards while ensuring privacy and cybersecurity safeguards can unlock new avenues of growth, and the paper stresses this aspect and the need to foster LDC participation in the services trade through investment, mentorship, and skill upgradation. And finally, the fourth recommendation, the inclusivity agenda is at its inflection point today. The economic slowdown, rising inflation, and risks emerging from geopolitical conflicts, if left unaddressed, can trigger millions being pushed into extreme poverty, and the paper calls for addressal of these. LDCs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, women and youth remain underrepresented in a global trade, and the policy paper highlights the criticality to bridge the economic divide faced by these segments through the creation of opportunities, institutions, platforms, skill building, and appropriate regulation. The task force calls for the development of requisite infrastructure and trade financing for the enhanced participation of marginalized trade participants in global trade. A concerted, collaborative, and cohesive effort through inclusive trade and investment policies would be in the true spirit of the concept of the world as one Earth, one family, one future. The task force believes that we all together can shape a future where trade and investment flourish, creating a more prosperous, inclusive, and resilient world. Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am.